Well, the Department of Justice has subpoenaed NVDA as it continues to investigate claims that the chipmaker violated antitrust laws. Joining us right now to talk about the potential case against NVIDIA is former Department of Justice prosecutor Firdaus Al-Tayi. And Firdaus, let's run through this because it's not illegal to be a monopoly. It's not illegal to be really great at what you do. What would the Department of Justice be looking into? What could it potentially see that would be unlawful?
You're exactly right. What most companies want to do, what most businesses want to do is dominate. The way you dominate is by bringing superior products to the market as quickly as you can and servicing your customers. When you do that successfully, I often tell my clients, congratulations, you are now in the crosshairs of the federal government. So what happens is DOJ is very focused on, and the Federal Trade Commission as well, monopolists who have used their monopoly power illegally. So there are many legal monopolies. A patent is an example. A trademark is an example. But when you use that power illegally, then the federal regulators step in. NVIDIA is incredibly acquisitive. In 2024, it had many acquisitions. It did extremely well in the market, and that has brought in a lot of ire from federal regulators.
A lot of ire just because there's more demand for the chips than they can supply at this point, or based on who they're giving those chips to? I'm not sure I entirely understand.
So I came out of the DOJ Antitrust Division in a section that looked at things that were federally regulated across computers and processing chips. We have a consolidation in artificial intelligence. The government under the Biden administration on both the FTC and DOJ have announced that consolidation in chip makers is concerning because they don't want only certain companies to control how many chips go out. NVIDIA has been accused of selectively providing their product quicker to market to certain consumers of their products. The government doesn't want that. They want an equal distribution. And now the FTC and DOJ have divided up the AI industry. So DOJ is looking at NVIDIA and the FTC is looking at two other acquisitions. And the reason why is because they don't want consolidation into certain companies, because then those companies could restrict supply, which would increase demand. They could drop prices so they could block out their competitors and then raise prices. Both of those are critically illegal and actually criminally illegal under the antitrust laws.
But simply, I mean, Jensen Huang in the past, the CEO of NVIDIA, has said that he wants to give the chips to places where they're going to most quickly be used and put into place. You're saying that's part of the problem, actually, that what they should be doing is distributing it more evenly so that even if there's not enough to go around, that means what? That you get, if you ask for 100 chips, you should only get 20 so that we can give more to other outlets?
Right. So that's a great question. This is where business acumen, what the CEO of NVIDIA is saying, meets a regulatory review. So it just depends. It depends if NVIDIA's story about how they're selecting their customers and consumers, if that proves true to the government. You can discriminate against certain customers in advantage of other customers under a very specific set of facts. If NVIDIA can prove that what they're doing is beneficial for customers, then they win that argument. If they cannot prove that, then they lose that argument. And that is the battle of the experts, both the experts internally at the DOJ, who are economists, external experts that DOJ will hire, and of course, NVIDIA's counsel team and their own experts. They have to prove that in a court of law. Right now, NVIDIA, because it's going through yet another acquisition, has to and has made a public filing under the Hart-Scott-Rodino Act that goes to DOJ and FTC. DOJ is now the regulator who's going to be looking at that acquisition. They can, of course, always send a civil investigative demand, basically a document and deposition subpoena to any company that's regulated. When NVIDIA goes for another acquisition, that actually opens up DOJ's opportunity to look even deeper into the company before approving that acquisition to go forward. That's the position that NVIDIA is in. So DOJ
Firdaus, let me just back this up one moment. I'm not sure I understand. If they can prove that it's good for customers, for certain customers, or it has to be good for all customers? Because I'm sure if you're asking the big guys who are getting all these chips, they're saying it's great for us. If you look at other customers who aren't getting the chips they want, they're going to say it's bad for us. And some have even supposed that this is coming because some of those customers who aren't getting as many chips as they want are complaining. Does that sound like the type of situation where it would pass muster or would not pass muster?
You are right. Usually it's the customers who are not getting the supply that they demand that go to DOJ and the regulators and complain. DOJ will take a look at what those customers are saying versus what NVIDIA is saying. And of course, NVIDIA will bring to bear all of its own customers who are very satisfied with the product, very satisfied with the supply. And then DOJ will balance what is happening across the market for AI chips. They will look at the market entirely, and then they will decide whether it is permissible under the federal antitrust laws to discriminate against certain customers in favor.
Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time for FOMO, and today we are looking at NVIDIA, as it has been, I would say, arguably one of the most important movers of the week, shedding about 9% now week to date. So here now joining me to discuss more on all things NVIDIA is my co-host today, Caroline Woods. And Caroline, I think that this has been, the main focus of the entire year, no surprise, but I also feel like it's been a great way to read, the rest of the overall market. Anytime I need to look at the NASDAQ or the S&P, look no further than NVIDIA. And I think that has been the case for so long, and then it also adds a massive risk when NVIDIA sells off, obviously.
Most certainly. I know when you said the most important stock of the week, I immediately went and thought, pretty sure that this has been the most important stock for at least a year. Obviously, we've talked about it so much. It gets a lot of airtime here on Schwab Network. There are certainly perks to being the world's most valuable chip maker, but there are also downsides as well. Obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about yesterday's sell-off, the 9.5% downturn that it took. And also, it's getting some regulatory scrutiny, Jenny, which could be contributing to yesterday's move. We were talking about on Fast Market, maybe there was a leak because it came out later yesterday. Doesn't seem to be doing all that much today. Investors sort of deciding what to do with it. Shares are up about 0.8% right now. They were 2% lower, 2% higher. They've been flat, so all over the place. But the U.S. Justice Department did issue subpoenas to NVIDIA and other companies as part of this broader antitrust investigation. According to Bloomberg News, they had previously delivered questionnaires, but now they've sent legally binding requests to the chip maker. Antitrust officials are concerned that NVIDIA is making it harder to switch to other suppliers, and also that NVIDIA penalizes buyers that don't exclusively use its AI chips. Now, as part of this DOJ probe, investigators are also concerned that about the NVIDIA's acquisition of Run AI, which it was announced back in April. Run AI, of course, makes basically software for managing AI computing. There are concerns that the combination of the two companies would make it even more difficult for customers to switch away from NVIDIA chips, and regulators are basically investigating whether or not NVIDIA gives preferential pricing or supply to customers who only use its technology or buy its complete systems. So that's, of course, all according to Bloomberg News. In responding to questions about the probe, NVIDIA really just touted the speed of its chips and the quality of its products, saying NVIDIA wins on merit as reflected in our benchmark results and value to customers who can choose whatever solution is best for them. So NVIDIA shares up about 1% right now, still down about 8.5% this week. Obviously, it's only the second day of trading of this week. It's a holiday shortened week. But if you take a look and zoom out, NVIDIA shares up 120% year to date, 125% over the past 1 year. So while they are, off the highs, they've still had such an impressive run higher, and adding a little bit to that run today.
Yeah, and I would say it's frankly impressive the way how this name has been able to turn things around, although I guess yesterday was its most substantial day of selling. I mean, yesterday we saw it shed almost $280 billion of market value, obviously in just one single session. That was the largest one-day decline on record for any U.S. company, which is just in itself something ridiculous. I mean, Caroline, I have said this over and over today, and I keep saying million because billion to me is just not even feasible that a company can have grown as substantially as this name has. I mean, we talk about the way it was able to surpass a name like Apple for market value. I believe Apple's taken back the throne and Microsoft has as well, but briefly, NVIDIA was the most valuable company in the world, and I just feel like this is what happens. You put the entire fate of the stock market in one company, and things are now being potentially faced with legal issues and overall maybe market, I'd say valuation concerns, and NVIDIA takes the blame. But I mean, NVIDIA has also put the market on its back this entire year.
Yeah, I think the moral of that story is 9.5% of nearly $3 trillion is a whole lot of money, right? We certainly learned that yesterday. A few other things to keep in mind. You talked about, obviously valuations being called into question. Competition is another headwind that NVIDIA has to face. And it hasn't necessarily caused analysts to be any less bullish on the name, despite the fact that some of the other competitors are trying to catch up, like the AMDs of the world. 92% of analysts still have a buy rating on shares of NVIDIA. The price target is $147, the median price target. So still, quite a bit of upside from current levels, according to Wall Street, back above those highs. But they also are facing, obviously, export controls to China and competition over there. And there was this interesting Financial Times report on that that's pointing out that China's attempts to compete with NVIDIA's chips seem to be falling a bit flat, pointing out that software is bug-ridden, saying that many Huawei customers, so Huawei really kind of ending up being the front runner there as a domestic solution because NVIDIA can't ship its most high-power chips over to China because of U.S. export controls, saying many Huawei customers are complaining about performance issues and difficulties switching from NVIDIA products. They say that the company's chips are still far behind NVIDIA's initial training of models. That's according to several industry insiders. So it's interesting, as there's this regulatory scrutiny that NVIDIA forces people to use their chips, that some of the competitors' chips out there just aren't up to snuff. This, of course, all according to the Financial Times, which really just goes to show the power of NVIDIA right now.
It does. And I would say that power seemingly, whether it's for evil or for good, it seems like it can move in either direction. Although I will say, overwhelmingly so, it's been for the positive, it seems like, this year. I just think it's now an interesting move from the DOJ to go after a company that has been like the crown prince of the overall AI trade, which I guess is maybe the concern, is that they're too much dominant, and that's where we'll have to see how the chips sort of fall here and what this means, like legal ramification-wise. But still, NVIDIA hanging on to a near percent rally on the day. We are seeing some weakness in the overall market here, but still a relatively quiet day. I know relative to yesterday, Caroline, but we will leave it there for our FOMO segment, for our NVIDIA talk, as I'm sure we'll be revisiting this name several times this week.
NVIDIA's antitrust pressure is escalating. According to Bloomberg, the AI heavyweight has received several subpoenas from the Department of Justice as part of an ongoing investigation into NVIDIA's dominance in the AI space. With us to discuss, we've got Bill Baer, who is the former Assistant Attorney General of the DOJ's Antitrust Division and current visiting fellow at the Brookings Institution. Great to have you here with us today. So from what you've read through here on NVIDIA and the subpoena that's come forward, does it have weight? Does it carry weight into what the allegations are and how NVIDIA has essentially kind of entrenched itself or given itself a moat in an ever-changing AI landscape that really derives from some of the chips at the bottom end where NVIDIA deals and dabbles?
Well, thanks for having me back. It's good to be with the two of you again. We don't know a lot about what the Justice Department is doing here. We understand there have been subpoenas that have come out. We understand there's some concern that NVIDIA may be trying to force purchasers of its processors, AI processors, chips, to be exclusive, let NVIDIA be its exclusive supplier, and charging higher prices for those customers who are sourcing chips from multiple companies. That could be an antitrust problem. But it's really important to note the subpoena is an early stage event in an antitrust inquiry. There's going to be a lot of time for the government and NVIDIA to negotiate what's going to be complied, both in terms of documents and data. A lot of time for the Justice Department to analyze it. And then if they want to keep going, they're going to subpoena deposition testimony from company officials, from competitors, from customers who may feel aggrieved. So we've got a long way to go. This is not a matter of weeks, it's months.
Well, and it's interesting because we spoke with Patrick Moorhead earlier about the potential timeline. He's an analyst who looks at some of the chip stocks. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about the path forward here.
I think investors know, particularly institutional investors, that any type of Department of Justice ruling, I mean, my gosh, this takes a decade. What NVIDIA can be doing is to continue to have the highest performance computing in the data center to solve the problems of the hyperscalers and the enterprises and the tier 2 CSPs.
In your experience, Bill, does a probe like this, which according to Patrick could take up to a decade, prevent companies from exploring any future growth opportunities? And could that potentially weigh on a company like NVIDIA moving forward? Or will this sort of be business as usual with the DOJ and NVIDIA?
I think most companies would continue to pursue the practices they think that are profit maximizing. I do think it's a bit of hyperbole to suggest it's going to take a decade. At the same time, one of the things the Federal Trade Commission and the Antitrust Division are trying to do is get ahead of the curve, figure out where a market may be trending toward a monopoly, and intervene earlier. They're certainly trying to do that in the AI space.
And so for the Department of Justice and other regulatory bodies that are trying to both at the same time wrap their heads around a new technology wave that they're seeing and then understand how to apply any type of the legal constructs that already exist here, how much of a learning curve do you think there's still going to be around such an innovative part of the broader tech sector right now?
Well, I think the government's gotten pretty sophisticated about antitrust analysis of the tech sector. Look at the Google case, Google search engine case, which DOJ recently won. We're about to have a trial on Google ad tech. So the government has gotten more knowledgeable, more sophisticated, and I think moving more quickly than maybe 15 or 20 years ago.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about U.S. Steel briefly before we let you go. We know, for example, that the company and the CEO spoke with the Wall Street Journal this morning, saying that if the deal with Nippon fails, U.S. Steel could be in danger of having to close plants. That would, of course, potentially involve layoffs. I'm just curious what this indicates to you moving forward about the potential of the U.S. government blocking any of these foreign deal-making opportunities from happening. How likely is that, in your point of view, moving forward, and what are the potential ramifications of that?
Well, it's too early to tell. This is an inquiry that has been going on. It's done non-publicly, and trying to assess through this mechanism, this committee called CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, is taking a look at the national security, the economic ramifications of Nippon buying U.S. Steel. And I'm sure they're looking at the ramifications if Nippon is not allowed to buy U.S. Steel. This is a healthy process. It runs in parallel with antitrust review. If it's not Nippon, who else is out there that potentially would be a suitable buyer for U.S. Steel? So we've got a long way to go on this, and I realize it's very important to the workers and to the companies.
It has to be the focus of the market. Yesterday, down 10%. Even before we got news that the antitrust probe, Bloomberg Intelligence antitrust litigation and policy analyst Justin Teresi joins us now. So I guess there's a couple of issues here, Justin. First of all, the huge drop. They were literally decimated in yesterday's trade. And then after that, we got this antitrust probe. Did people know? Was there a leak before the announcement?
So busy day for sure, I'd say, for NVIDIA. But what's really important to remember here is that news broke a couple months ago that DOJ was already starting a probe into NVIDIA on a series of antitrust concerns. So it's this next step here, the issuance of a subpoena. In many ways, that was really expected. All that had happened before is that informal inquiries were issued that didn't really have the force of law behind them. So what this does is guarantees now that NVIDIA, in complying with the subpoena, which will take quite some time, I should add, what that's going to do is NVIDIA is going to have to certify, basically, that what they're producing and handing over to DOJ is the kit and caboodle of what they're asking about.
And so I'm curious about how this wraps into sort of the U.S.'s geopolitical ambitions when it comes to the chip industry, because NVIDIA is the global leader in chip making, and you have to think that the United States wants it to keep that position.
Well, that is certainly the argument you're hearing from some folks on Capitol Hill right now with regard to the antitrust concerns that we're looking at.
Well, we should also point out, NVIDIA doesn't make chips, right? NVIDIA gives their designs to TSMC to make chips in Taiwan.
Be that as it may, we're seeing acquisitions by NVIDIA now, right? Where this issue of consolidation in that space is raising some red flags. But to your point, too, about global dominance, we're seeing investigations of NVIDIA by several authorities around the world. The most stark maybe being the French raid of a NVIDIA office last fall, which was followed up with news last month that charges are likely to happen there in France. So it's not isolated to America. We're seeing this around the world. And really, this issue of dominance is one that some folks are actually saying is a fallacy in the AI space.
But NVIDIA is so far ahead of the pack at this point. How much are these allegations, or even the probe itself, really something that would lead to more of a slap on the wrist rather than a dire outcome?
Right. So it's impossible just yet to know exactly where DOJ is going. We're getting these mini leaks, if you will, the last few months, right? So what we know so far is that consolidation in the industry might be one issue they're curious about, but another might be things like tying products together, forcing customers perhaps to buy two products instead of one. In order to get the services of one product, you have to buy both of them. Those are things that can raise an anti-competitive flag when somebody has an extreme market domination position. So that's something we think authorities are looking into. But we're years away, I think, from any structural behavioral changes that we're likely to see at the hands of this investigation. It's going to take a long time for DOJ to get through these documents that they're going to get from the
Department issuing subpoenas to NVIDIA, but also their peers in industry.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. So the procedure here is that the DOJ is getting more serious about their investigation. They're looking to hear from NVIDIA about their sales practices, about their industry, and they're probably looking at their peers, not because their peers are in trouble, but more because they want to hear about their experience in competing with and buying from NVIDIA. And this is all, you know, a ramp up to a potential lawsuit, I think is the idea behind these subpoenas.
Can you go into precedents, Rebecca, of making it hard to switch suppliers or perhaps pushing customers for exclusive deals? Is that just part of the course of doing business if you've got someone wanting to remain with you vertically, or is that ever deemed anti-competitive?
It can be deemed anti-competitive. Excuse me. You know, this is not that different from some of the accusations in the Microsoft case, which is one of the biggest antitrust cases of the last 20 years, 25 years. Some of the ideas behind this, the theory of this case, which of course we don't really know what the theory of this case is, but some of the ideas behind this, the complaints so far have been similar to those from Microsoft. Exclusive dealing was the problem in the Google case that Google just lost. So these things can be anti-competitive. The question is, you know, are they undertaken by a monopolist? So plenty of things that you do that are perfectly fine if you're not a monopolist become unlawful if you're a monopolist. And then the other question is, are they instead providing some value to their consumers? Is there some pro-competitive reason to provide your goods in this way?
Rebecca, I wondered if I might ask you a somewhat, I guess, academic question or indeed a policy question that NVIDIA would tell you they are America's darling. They're an American company. They follow American laws, and they are putting America first in terms of their leadership of an industry. Why would the Justice Department go after them in that respect?
Yeah, so why would we kill our golden goose, you know? Like
exactly so, yeah.
So part of the point here is that we're not trying to kill anything. We are trying to make this market, which is obviously crucial for the AI race, it's crucial for America's sort of, you know, financial world leader status. We're trying to make it competitive because competitive markets work best. And, you know, there's precedent even just a couple of years ago for the agencies going after NVIDIA for doing something they perceived as anti-competitive, and they stopped it. This was an acquisition from 2022. And NVIDIA went on to do all that it's done over the last 2 years. I think that's the idea. It's that we can't expect companies to self-regulate. We want them to be innovative. We want them to work hard. And yes, we love the success that NVIDIA has had. Go out and do more, but we have to create the competitive environment for those incentives to work properly.
And I'm sure AMD, Intel would love to feel that they can be an also-ran a little bit more than they're currently deemed by the market. But Rebecca, when this sort of policy action, if we do get a formal investigation, at the moment we understand it's just subpoenas, it's just the groundswork. If something does occur, how much of a distraction does it end up being for businesses? At the moment we have a problem of demand outstripping supply.
So that's true. And, the legal stuff is definitely a distraction. It's something that Meta and Google have been used to for much longer. They have larger infrastructure, larger sets of lawyers that NVIDIA does. So, there's a cost to this, and there's the uncertainty, and there's what happened to the market. This regulation, this sort of enforcement is not totally costless. At the same time, it's really the payoff, I think, is really significant. And I think there not being enough chips out there is part of the problem. So what we want is a competitive market because that maximizes output. That creates the most chips for the most people. And so that is actually what's at stake here. NVIDIA is going to say, no, if you come after us, that means even fewer chips for the market. But I don't think it's a zero-sum game in that way.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you are having a great, blessed day. After watching all the analysts today try to decipher what the antitrust suit is about and how does it affect the stock, how does it affect the company, and really what is the meat and potatoes of this action. I can tell you my opinion on it. My opinion is that you see a company that has a product that is so strong, such a high demand for it, that you have a fight. This is a fight among customers. This is customers fighting other customers. They're upset because they want access to these chips before certain customers. And, NVIDIA has a product that they can be choosy on who they sell the product to, and in return they want repeat business, and I can understand it from a business standpoint. Do they supply the Magnificent Six with the chips, or do they supply this to a small cap or a mid cap company? Who's going to be a return customer? Who's going to spend the most dollars over the long term? That's just a business sense thing that's going on. And that's why this antitrust thing, I think, is just a nothing burger. That's all it is. And I think you got the market makers that's also want to use this as a catalyst to make it go down lower, to force you to sell, to get this price down low where they can go back in and buy it again and run it back up again and rinse and repeat. I think that's all it is to this. And as you look at all analysts, and as I've watched them today, this is something that's coming. As they stated earlier, Microsoft went through this. Any company that's industrialized, that's revolutionizing something new, and that person, that company is out ahead of everyone else, or has a product in high demand, these type of actions happen. These type of lawsuits happen. So you got customers that are competing with other customers for the product, because we're talking about items that are sold out through 2026. And people, a lot of these people don't want to be left behind. They want the chips now. They want to be on the same waiting list with Tesla, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Apple, and they sue them for that reason. And they say, hey, this is a monopoly. Why are you selling all these to the big six? Why is that? I want some, but it's not enough to go around for everyone. And I think it's just gonna be a nothing burger, And there's nothing gonna be nothing come out of this. This is just a sideshow that's being exploited. I don't think anything's gonna come out of this. My opinion. Now, this is my opinion on it, and I don't think anything's gonna come from it. I think all this is just a catalyst that's being used to drive the price down. And of all days, they waited. They waited until a down day. They waited for this until a down day to issue those subpoenas. Which subpoena don't mean anything. Subpoena just means, hey, I got some questions for you. I want you to be here. I want some information. I want this. It doesn't mean you're guilty, or anything like that. That's all it is. Just say, hey, I want some information. And I'm going through the court procedure because you may not want to give it to me voluntarily. But like I said, I don't see anything that's going to come out of that. They're still the greatest company in the chip producers. There's nothing going to go wrong with the black whale that they're producing. They're going to be shipping in the fourth quarter, and they expected high profits again, like they've been doing every earnings report. So, like I said, my opinion is a nothing burger. There's nothing to it. Anyway, I just want to give you my reaction to it. I'll be keeping up with different and compiling different videos. Try to get one out every evening so that you don't have to search through all the different channels to find them. And I like to compile them and give you my reaction to all of it. Anyway, hope you're having a blessed evening. And please consider to subscribe to my channel, like and share. Thank you.